This is James Headley and welcome back to the Living in Savannah channel. Today we are at the landings on Skidaway Island at the Oakridge campus. Just over my shoulder back here you can see the Oakridge Clubhouse Pro Shop. Farther off in the distance is the actual clubhouse dining area, spirited gourmet, etc. That's over this shoulder back here. And not visible, but directly back over this way is the Wellness Center, which I've talked about in other videos, and we'll do a tour of at some point in the future. But in any event, today I'm going to do a course tour. I'll split this into two videos given the length, but do a course tour of the Oakridge course for you so that you'll have a sense of one of the 6 wonderful championship golf courses that we have here at the landings. As always, if you have any questions about homes here, about the golf courses, about other amenities, please do reach out anytime, and certainly I appreciate you liking, subscribing, and sharing. And with that, we will turn things around and get started with the first hole of the Oakridge course, which was designed by Arthur Hills. So here we are on the first tee. This is a par 4 dogleg to the left. The Oakridge course, the reason I'm out here actually being able to film this today is that we're in the process of aeration and routine summertime maintenance, as each of the courses goes through a rotation of that around this time of the year, just to improve playability throughout the summer season and through the growing season. In any event, here the first hole, it's a challenging. Oakridge is an interesting layout in terms of the design. The first and second holes, and even to a lesser extent the third, which we'll see, are very challenging opening holes. Similarly, on the back 9, 10 and 11, for my money, are 2 of the tougher par 4s back-to-back anywhere on the island to go along with these 2 opening holes as well. So in any event, as you can see, pretty wide open fairway, but with the dogleg left and the length on this hole, you really want to be favoring the left-hand side to give yourself a reasonable approach into number 1. Now here we are just past the 150-yard marker, looking at the green here on number 1. Uphill approach with a green that does have a fairly significant slope to it in some of the areas. Definitely falls off to the left as you get toward the middle of the green, and anything short is not likely to bounce up given a fairly severe bank there, as well as if you hit that front of the green with any kind of spin, chances are that you may be rolling off, or at least rolling back to the front of the green. So your work isn't done after you've managed to navigate around a corner with the drive. Definitely a good premium out here on this first hole on that second shot. Here we are at the club tee box, and routinely the tournament tee box as well, here on the second hole of the Oakridge course. Another dogleg left, not quite as severe in terms of the dogleg as number 1, but it is a longer hole. Definitely a good challenge here at over 400 yards from most of the tees. Again, favor the left side a little bit, but anything down the middle here still gives you a fairly similar second shot in. Again, it's an elevated green, which we'll see as we get up to the 150 marker, with a bit of slope as well on this green, making a 2-putt not an automatic, depending upon where you hit that approach shot into. Again, very good challenge out here on these first 2 opening holes. Here we are on the front of the second green, looking back into the fairway to give you a sense of that approach and that dogleg. Sure how much you can tell, but definitely, again, an uphill approach to here. We've got a bunker here on the left-hand side protecting this large green. Again, a fair amount of undulation. It's going to fall off left on that side. Definitely slope hard from back to front if you're past the pin, and just a bit of mounding all around the green otherwise to make for some interesting chips into it if you happen to miss a green with your second shot. After those two challenging par fours to start, we come to the par three third hole, which don't take too much of a breath because, as you can see, this is a hole that is protected on the left-hand side by the water, basically all the way down the left-hand side, and on the right-hand side by some pretty significant moguling mounds there with a couple of bunkers to protect this hole for those who play too far away from that water on the right-hand side. And I can certainly speak for experience. This green from those bunkers does pretty much flow away from you toward the water, so it can be a little bit of a knee knocker at times in those bunkers, hitting out to the pin and trying to keep it from rolling a bit too far and off the railroad ties and into the drink. But this is a hole that's going to play, depending upon the tees, of course, but from the club tees here, you're generally looking at somewhere in that 150 to 160-ish range, perhaps a little shorter than that, depending upon the pin placement on this deep, but not particularly wide green at Oakridge number 3. And here we are after a short walk across the road and past the Oakridge entrance gate to the landings. We come to the par 5 fourth hole. Tee shot here. This water shouldn't come into play, but you know, occasionally it does, and I'll admit I've lost a couple of balls in this drink with some less than beautiful tee shots. But after those first two, call it three, depending upon how well you play that third hole, here's a chance to maybe get a shot back. Definitely a birdieable par 5, potentially reachable depending upon the wind and of course your length. But the tee shot, lots of area to land out here. It does look like there isn't as much room on the right as there is, and definitely if you get a little too far right and wayward, the hill will tend to kick it back down into or at least near the fairway. And we will see as we get up here. It's fairly straight, perhaps a little bit of a dogleg right, but not much to speak of. Just hit a good tee shot, and then it's a matter of picking a club for your second shot that gives you a comfortable distance. If you aren't taking a good rip and trying to get home in 2, which we'll see there's some defense up there, if that is indeed what you decide to do. As we look back to the tee from a little short of the 200-yard marker in, where a lot of balls will end up on this hole, if not just short of here, I'll take a little look at some of the homes here at Oakridge. Tend to be a good mix over here, patio homes and more of the estate variety homes, depending upon what section of Oakridge you're in. A lot of nice, larger, stucco, newer, some newish homes out here at Oakridge. So good options for those of you who might be interested in the real estate here. And as we come back to the tee in the lagoon, we will proceed up to the green. And here we are. Just short of the fourth green. See a bunker here on the right hand side protecting this plateau green. Not quite as severe of an uphill shot, and really not much of an uphill shot, just a bit of an elevated green, again plateau style. Slightly flatter green than the first two holes, similar to the third, a little more sort of a circle green here than the oval-shaped first 3 holes. But the mounding, definitely, if you aren't accurate with that second or third shot, the mounding and those bunkers up front will give a good defense and can make for a challenging pitch up, as we see one of the many lagoons out here on the Oakridge course and in the landings in general, and a few more homes just off of the back of the fourth green. And we will just continue and walk over to the fifth tee. Is just there at the top of the hill in the distance. This is number 5 is a par 3, a relatively straightforward par 3. hitting off of the elevated tee you can see here to a slightly elevated green, but not really an uphill tee shot. More of elevation to elevation with some valley in between and some bunkering on the left-hand side that you can see there, and then a little bit more behind the green as well, should you go long here. But again, very straightforward, very fair, par 3. And a good opportunity to hopefully make par, if not better, as we go through this string of holes to maybe recapture some of what you perhaps lost on the first 2 or 3 holes. The short par 4/6 at Oakridge is another gettable hole, although as we will see, there are definitely some aspects of this hole that can jump up and bite you. Definitely not the necessity for most to hit driver off the tee here. There's a bit of danger here on the right-hand side. As you can probably see, the marsh out there, and then a very long waste area. Has a bit of water in it right now after a pretty heavy rain this weekend. And then over to the left is a tiny bunker, but boy, is there a magnet in that for shots being played away from the marsh on this hole. And it's definitely a lot of players will take 3-wood here or less just to get something out there. Again, very very short par 4. That it's all about the second shot, as we'll see as you see the green complex in just a moment. So now that we're at the 6th green, just shy of it, you can see that there is, as I said, definitely some defense here. The bunker to the right and on the front, another bunker on the left-hand side. Hard to see slope, I know, oftentimes in these videos, but definitely this green is running back toward me from this side. There's a buried elephant here on the left-hand side that's going to kick shots to the left down toward that bunker, or toward the back of the green, or toward the right, depending upon obviously where you land on there. The front right edge of this green is a false front that will run down and off the green, sometimes fairly considerably if you leave it on this side. Another pretty good hump here on the front of the green as well. So a lot of undulation on this green, and anything that approaches going long is going to tend to run off the back, and often a little closer than you might like into the bit of waste area back here, scrub grass, and then of course the marsh beyond that if you really get a little feisty with it. But a good par 4 with some definite strategy coming into play, primarily off the tee, deciding how you'd like to approach it, and depending upon the pin position, that can really have an impact on how you play that. As we walk over to the 7th tee complex, 7 is another par 5, the second of the par 5s on the front 9. Oakridge course is a par 72 with 2 5s and 2 3s on each side. Good mix of challenge and of hole design, as we'll see as we go. But this number 7, definitely it's a reachable par 5 for many players. There is a oak tree there just in the center of the fairway that splits the fairway. It's a good aiming point, as many will tell you. And many will also tell you that they've hit that tree more than they'd like to admit. It's that rare shot where you hit it where you aim it, but the tree can come into play there. At either side of the tree, there is considerable room to hit that first shot, and then hopefully get it to run past the tree pretty good. There's a nice downslope there, which definitely hitting there or on that downslope and getting a lot of run out is going to bring getting home in 2 into play, and we'll see what that looks like here in just a moment. And here we are just inside the 200-yard marker, looking back at the tee and the aforementioned aiming tree. As you can see, we're on the upper section of the fairway, but there is a slightly split fairway here with the lower fairway down to the right. Generally playing up here on the left-hand side is going to be advantageous. As you can see off in the distance, the green with water on the right-hand side protecting this green, and then on the left-hand side there is there's some bunkering that is going to protect those shots that play a little too far away from the water. Green is sloped from back to front. Generally that's I mean a bit of left to right break depending upon where you are, but it's you know, most pronounced as a back to front green, so it is receptive to getting home in two on this hole. Probably one of the top 2 or 3 eagle holes on the entire island. If you pay attention to the announcements of eagles that get put out in the weekly magazine here for the island. Lots of representation of number 7 here on the Oakridge course. We'll just finish out the walk up the fairway here and the approach. If you haven't gone for it in 2, oftentimes you've got just a little wedge in from somewhere in this vicinity or a little farther back. Again, just taking this water out of play on the right-hand side, particularly for some front right and even middle right pin placements. That can come into play a little bit more than other shots. Bit of a, you know, not super generous, but a reasonable and fair little throat here in the green coming up for those approach shots. And the aforementioned bunker here on the left-hand side, protecting against those shots that, again, play a little too far away from the water. But a large deep green. And we'll finish out by just walking over the back. You don't want to get too aggressive with back pins here because the water does come into play for any shots that are even just a little bit deep here. You'll end up rolling over those railroad ties and into the lagoon. And as we come to the tee box of the par 4 8th, it's another shortish par 4. It's going to play around 300 yards, maybe just under 300 yards from the club tees most days. There is bunkering, fairway bunkering down the right and left-hand sides. You don't want to thread those, but a lot of shots will end up, if you hit driver, well inside of 100 yards at the bottom of the downslope that takes it over inside the 150-yard mark on this hole. So you find yourself with a lot of in-between wedges here if you do decide to hit driver, but not unheard of to see shots in that 40 to 50-yard range. So if you've got good wedge game, a nice touch around the greens, that can really be advantageous here, and this is definitely a gettable par 4. Green does have some significant slope to it, particularly falling off on the right-hand side to the right, and definitely not a green that you want to go over, as it is a fairly severe slope, which we'll see in just a second. Again, while certainly not one of the longest par 4s, the challenge here is in the second shot and getting reasonably close to the pin, or at least not in 3-putt distance should you hit the green. Again, front is protected by a fairly sharp slope up to this green, and then bunkering and some grass mound, grass bunkering as well as we go around the green and have a quick look. You'll also be able to see that pretty good sloping down around this green on the entirety of the perimeter. So you can have some very interesting chips from down the hill back up to a green that does slope from back to front predominantly, and then also from left to right as you look at the green from the fairway. And there is that fall off that I mentioned before. Again, short hole, but definitely a good value in shot making out here as we head over to the finishing hole, which is a return to a bit more of the the challenge of those first 2 holes, though not quite as long. It's definitely a good challenge on the 4th. It is a dog leg left, so cutting off distance on the left-hand side definitely makes it play as a very different hole than if you keep the shot out to the right. On the left-hand side, though, there is some tree coverage, tree defense, as well as a very long set of bunkers that protect the left-hand side of the fairway here, and the fairway does fall off there into those bunkers on the left-hand side. But again, a nice strong finishing hole here on Oakridge number 9, and we'll pick this back up closer to the green. And here we are at the green on the 9th hole. Looking back, you can see the bunkering that runs down that left-hand side. And as you get closer to the green, left-hand side and short is protected by greenside bunker, and then by more of that mounding to a plateau green that we see a lot out here at Oakridge. Coming fully around. Par's a good score here, for sure. And you can grab some more sand for your divot replacement, divot fill, pop in for a quick bio break, or head over to the Oakridge bar to grab something for the back 9 as we make the turn. Thanks again for joining me today for our tour of the front 9 here at the Oakridge golf course at the landings at Skidaway Island. Behind me here, you can see the Oakridge clubhouse, and again the pro shop, putting green, chipping green, and eventually the driving range. Oakridge, along with Deer Creek, is one of the 2 facilities where there is a single golf course, practice facilities there to go along with our other 2 clubhouses and golf course facilities where there are 2 golf courses, each of them with their practice range available for your use. Again, if you have any questions about the landings, about the golf courses, about other amenities, real estate, etc., please do get in touch with me directly anytime. And again, I appreciate liking, subscribing, and sharing, and I'll look forward to seeing you in the next episode.